Computer, I will share my slides. Are my slides visible?
Yeah, we can see them.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, it's morning here, so I will wish everybody a good morning. I know it's evening from wherever everybody has joined. The title of my presentation is Parliamentary Debates and Unparliamentary Humour, the Cultural Politics of Humour in the Indian Parliament. I will primarily be looking at the examples from the lower house of the Parliament. So Indian Parliament has two houses. It's sort of based on the British parliamentary system, Westminster system. So there's a lower house, the House of Commons, and there is an upper house, the House of Lords. So I'll be looking at the lower house. So where the representatives of the people are elected through direct voting in particular constituencies in different states of the country, and they are elected to be members of the parliament. So humor in the parliamentary proceedings is often dismissed as a mere diversion. And this I say with a lot of this I can say with a lot of examples of how humor has often either been dismissed as a diversion or been a big issue in the Indian Parliament. So it is sometimes humor becomes sort of a direct attack on this idea of the nation. But this paper tries to show that upon closer look, it reveals a cultural politics. So there's which is sometimes subversive and sometimes used in the hands of power to put other people in their place. And the terrain of humor is cut through by stratification markers, as any other social phenomena, which in Carrie's presentation was talking about. And even when it is a deliberative place where it touts itself as democratic. So humor reveals contestations of power and identity. And as politicians seek public recognition, humor becomes a performative act, sort of a claim to representation, to resonate with their audiences. So in the Indian case, and perhaps in all other parliaments, politicians are bound by certain scrutiny, and what they say has serious implications because they're looked at by all sorts of media sources. So the politicians become performers who are watched by an audience, and in their speeches they exhibit this awareness for watching public, and they even make direct appeals to the public, which may be imagined, but not really a fictional audience. They're actually referring to their audience. So my argument is that in such a context, humor emerges as a claim to representation, such that humor acts and utterances become, but they have persuasive tones. So they try to convince their audience of their fitness as representatives. So I'm trying to answer the question of the role of humor in the Indian parliamentary deliberation. So I'll ask, what is humor, and why do we find certain utterances in the parliament funny? And what is it that it feels so out of place to incite laugh? And how do we begin this desire of the politician for public recognition? And what are the key affordances that enable such a desire? And how is then humor operationalized towards what end? So all of these questions are contextual questions, even though they can be answered theoretically in the sense of why do we find something funny? So there'll be a theoretical understanding of, okay, something is funny because it is incongruous. But again, why incongruous? In the case of, like, what is the backdrop against which we find the utterances of the parliamentarians funny? Contextually, in the sense of the cultural context. So as Peter Berger would say, Peter Berger, a sociologist, would say that humor is a subjective capacity. And he creates a distinction between the subjective capacity and the objective correlate. So the phenomena that we find funny will be comic. So he starts with the simple idea of, oh, the question of the experience of the comic. So the experience of that which is found funny. And this that which is found funny is experienced as disruption, which is it is an intrusion of the everyday rhythms. So why do we find something funny? Among many theories, it's incongruity. This utterance, this utter sense of that something is out of place, and it just incites love. But why do we find what is so funny about the Indian Parliament? So a clue to situate it is through this sense of lament about the heydays of the Parliament when even ad hominem attacks were responded in a gentlemanly fashion. But what I'm arguing is that this feat relied on a deliberative and oratory competence of the framers of the Constitution. So what one hears in these elements is an expectation that the politicians will behave civilly, and they will have a sort of an impersonally principled politics that concerns itself with issues rather than going beyond issues into personal attacks or acting something out. But all of this sense of propriety was imputed because of the many years of the colonial regime. What pre-existed in the folk traditions of the whole of so the Indian subcontinent, that is the whole of South Asia, was a realm of personal abuses and attacks with folk norms of ritualistic more. So civility was not followed in the sense that it is supposed to be followed, because it was never. And it is also seen with a historically evolved suspicion. Now, this humor is against the backdrop of civility. So the expectations still echoes in say the rituals of the parliament, and the everyday functioning of the parliament is primarily ritualistic. So Jeffrey Alexander, another sociologist, will argue that all rituals have a performative core, and ritual point towards shared beliefs. They among the participants in the descriptive and prescriptive validity of communicated symbols. And we see that there are particular rituals. So in the arrangement of the Indian Parliament, the opposition and the incumbent government will sit facing each other in a sort of a semicircular way. So they'll be facing each other, and all of the references have to be mediated through the speaker. The speaker who's presiding, the chair who's presiding the assembly. It has to be directed through the speaker. But sometimes the politicians also bypass that and go directly to attack the opposition or the incumbent. So what we also see is that over the years, there has been a historical transformation in both in the composition and in the issues that have been taken up in the Indian Parliament. So, but so it's been almost more than 70 years of independence from the British rule. Now, so during the early years, there was a newly formed government and a stable majority by a single party called the Congress, the Indian National Congress. And they were the members of the parliament were mostly highly educated, elite, upper class, upper castes, uh, specifically mostly men. And this has been changing over time. So what we can see is right now right now the incumbent government is formed by the BJP. What we could see was from 1950s to 2010s, around initially in the 1950s, there was a clear majority of the Indian National Congress, and there is now a clear majority of BJP. But during all the time in between, there was no clear majority. So it was sort of like there was the Indian Parliament was transitioning, and the voices of the public sphere were trying to find their place in the parliament. So over time, the Indian Parliament has transitioned from a relatively immune institution dominated by unified elite vision to reflect the plurality of interests. And this transformation highlights how external socio-political dynamics have gradually eroded the parliament's insulation, making it more responsive to and contested by the evolving public sphere. So we also see that there is the sort of a change in the kind of voices that animate the parliament. Now, as Alexander would say, that similar to rise in the public sphere, there has also been a rise in the public stage. So a symbolic forum in which actors have increasing freedom to create and project their performances of their reasons and dramas tailored to the audience, whose voice has become more legitimate references in the political and social conflicts. So what we see is that the parliamentarians are not just, so they have they are in the parliament, they are a part of the public sphere, and a sort of a part of a public stage where they through their enactments, they're trying to command a sort of an audience, which has over years become a more legitimate space for them to talk to their audiences. And this is what I've been speculating, is that the public stage has found its way into the Indian Parliament as well, because so since 1992, the proceedings of the Indian Parliament have been recorded and been telecasted through the national broadcasting channel called the DD National. So what we see is that politicians are actually becoming a part of the mediatized world, not just outside of the parliament, just like everybody, but also inside the parliament. They make appeals because they can make appeals. Now, I will go ahead with the examples. I because of the paucity of time, I can't take more than 2 examples and analyze them. However, if time permits, I can go with more examples. So I will play this video, and I will also translate it. It's in Hindi. Hindi is one of the languages in India. So please tell me if it is audible.
We're not able to hear the video. When you shared your screen, there was an option to share sound as well. If you didn't select that, we won't be able to hear it. You might have to reshare.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have about 5 minutes left, just so you know.
Okay, I have 5 minutes.
आपके लिए मैं पप्पू हूँ, आपके लिए मैं अलग-अलग गाली दे सकते हो, मगर मेरे अंदर आपके खिलाफ इतना सा भी गुस्सा, इतना सा भी क्रोध, इतनी सी भी नफरत नहीं है। मैं कांग्रेस हूँ और ये सब कांग्रेस हैं, और कांग्रेस ने और इस भावना ने इस देश को बनाया है। इस बात को आप कभी मत भूलिए, और ये भावना आप सबके अंदर है, और इस भावना को मैं आप सबके अंदर से निकालूंगा।
What he's trying to say is, this is Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition, currently the leader of the opposition in the parliament, and he was not leader of the opposition then. What he's trying to say is that you have anger towards me, you can curse me in many ways, but for you, in response, there isn't any anger. I am Congress, and all this is Congress, and this sentiment has built this country. This sentiment is within all of you, and one by one, I am going to bring that sentiment out of you, bring love out of you all, and I will turn you into Congress. So in the full televised version, Rahul Gandhi is critiquing the incumbent government for their failures, which is a usual thing to do about their wrongdoings and how they're falling back. However, in this claim, what we also see is that he's not merely making a descriptive statement. He's merely descriptive or constantive. He's also trying to describe the way, he's not just trying to describe the way things are, he's also performing it. He's trying to bring the situation into being through the act of talking and also acting it out. So this world is brought about into being in the imagination of the listener. So Rahul, while making claims about Modi, is also making about the incumbent government, is also making claims about himself. The kind of world that Rahul is trying to bring about in the minds of the listeners is one in which Congress is constructed as sentiment, and this sentiment is the opposite of hate. He has built the nation. He then suggests that he will bring the sentiment in the opponents too. What happens is that in this way he's going beyond words and then immediately acts, and here will
एक-एक करके मैं आपके अंदर से आपके अंदर जो प्यार है उसको निकालूंगा और आप सबको और मेरे
Okay. What he does after this is that he gets up from his seat and then goes and hugs the prime minister. That also becomes a big issue, but also it becomes a laughing matter. So then the prime minister also comes up with this rejoinder of those who talk about eyes, the moment of their eyes has spoken, because so Rahul Gandhi goes to the prime minister to hug him, comes back, and then winks at someone, and the prime minister picks it up and makes fun here. So again, both of them are making reference to the whole nation, and they're not using it as mere rhetorical devices, but referring to an actual audience. In another case, there is this
Atmanirbhar it's very difficult.
So again, this is one of the members of the parliament who was finding it difficult to pronounce a word. She makes it makes a big deal out of it. What she says is that you should either have it in English or you should produce it in our regional language, because it is difficult and you're imposing that this is a sort of a problem with the language imposition.
1 minute left.
Then 1 minute. Yeah. So what she does is she goes ahead and speaks in Tamil. So again, it acts. She's acting it out in order to reverse the hierarchy. So I am at the end of the incomprehensibility, but now you will be. Okay. So what I'm trying to ultimately argue is that in these examples that I've analyzed and the ones that I could not analyze here, the audience is not directly referred to, yet it is imaginatively co-present. So in a few other examples, which I could not mention, so politicians make explicit appeals to the public. So as Alexander notes, in postmodern societies, there is an emergence of a new kind of reflexivity, that is self-consciousness about a mass-mediated production of political image. Political action can therefore be reconceptualized as political performance. And indeed, humor is not a diversion or a disruption, but a serious matter in this case. And it is operationalized to claim representation, representation, which is that I, as a politician, am fit to represent my constituency. So that is the main argument. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. If you have further questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well, or raise your hand on Zoom. Amy says, many thanks for this. In light of the colonial history in India, even though the British departed 77 years ago, how infected is the Indian Parliament by the British model with its raucous and loud cacophony of joking attacks?
Inflected.
Sorry.
It was funnier
Am I
with
audible?
infected.
Am I
Thanks,
audible?
Ruth. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, so in the Indian case, the thing is that so what I'm trying to argue is that there is an expectation of civility, and this expectation of civility did not exist in the ritualistic mode of the subcontinent. So culturally, there used to exist something called Kobir Ladai, poets fight. Poets would fight through ad hominem attacks. However, and when we see that sort of attack happening in the parliament as well. However, there is a certain elite expectation of you should respond civilly, and that I think comes primarily because there is a particular model, and even though there were raucous attacks and cacophony of like jokes in the British Parliament, that was not adapted in the Indian Parliament directly. Only the civility part was adapted, and even now, whenever there's a joke, it's a big issue. So, yeah.
Here. Any other questions, either in the chat or via raising your hand on Zoom?
The term for the verbal fight that you said was there before.
Yeah, it's called Kobir Ladai. So it's a Bengali term. It's called poets fight. Kabir Ladai.
Okay, is that similar to the pre-Islamic Arab duels?
Yeah.
Duels? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a verbal duel, but of a poetic verbal duel.
Yeah, that's the same thing
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the pre-Islamic, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions or comments?